Perfect. Yep, we can get that going. Cool. Yep, I can see all the projects here. All right, it's 12:02. Michael, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Jamil. I appreciate it. Hey, everybody that's in the room with us or scheduled to join. My name is Michael Pett. I am Uber's head of military and veteran programs. Before we jump into what that role entails, I'll give you a little background on myself. So I'm a retired disabled veteran in the United States Army. I spent 21 and a half years 15 on the active duty side, and the remaining time in the National Guard. The reason why I chose to step away from active duty after 15 years is really, I did probably something that a lot of you have done, right? Really I did a cost benefit analysis to figure out, is 5 more years of active duty worth it compared to leaving, separating from active duty and going and joining the civilian workforce? For me at that time, it made more sense for me to join the civilian workforce. I was still young enough to where I knew that I could somewhat integrate. So that's what I did. And then when I stepped away from active duty, my first company that I joined was a consulting firm called Accenture. Now I know a lot of you, maybe you're still in service or still on active duty, still in the Guard. I don't know where you're at in your respective journey. But for me, it made a lot of sense to just step away at that time because military hiring was at an all-time high. Okay. So I left and I joined my first team, and I was actually a contractor, believe it or not. I took that big of a leap of faith. I didn't even have a guaranteed full-time position when I chose this role. But as I overcame some imposter phenomenon, you might heard it as imposter syndrome, I wound up finding my way. I got a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, and about 6 months after working at Accenture, I was converted to a full-time employee. Okay. And about 6 months to a year later, I actually took over that entire military hiring team. Now, I know a lot of you are curious, what was your job? What did you do in the military? How did it translate, right? For me, I had a couple of different roles while I was in the military. Like I said, I was enlisted, so I held different MOSs. My first MOS was Human Resources Specialist, so I did some HR stuff. Then I was an 88 Mike, okay, so transportation, okay, over the road, driving and whatnot. And then my last billet that I held on active duty was as a recruiter. Now, I was pretty naive when I stepped away from active duty, as you all can imagine. Like I said, this was 11 years ago, and the military hiring space wasn't as robust as it is today. So, as I chose to kind of step away, I thought, oh my God, duh, no brainer. Recruiting in the military is so much harder than it is on the civilian side. How challenging can it be? Well, I was right. It is more difficult to recruit in the military, especially in a time of war. However, the languages, the platforms, the processes, all of those things that were done on the civilian side were so foreign to me. So I'm so grateful by having the opportunity to come in as a contractor, because it gave me a lot of runway to where I could learn those new technologies, learn how to pass a candidate on to a hiring manager. I mean, you name it. I learned it all in a very short period of time. But I'm grateful that I didn't try and fight for a recruiting manager position, because there's no way in hell that I would have done that role any service. I just was underprepared for that. So anywho, while I was at Accenture, we hired 5,000 veterans into consulting positions, not just veterans, but service members and military spouses. Okay. So we did a great job at finding new and creative roles for people to come into. Now, because we'd done such great work over there, Uber ultimately took notice, and they said, hey, Michael, would you come and build out a global program for us? So I know a lot of you know that Uber is not a rideshare company. We don't deliver food. We are a technology company that licenses a platform, right? So I know a lot of you got the Uber Eats vouchers, and I hope you all enjoy those, okay? But that's not who we are. That's just a part of who we are. Now, our earners are the heartbeat of our business. Without them, we are nothing. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is showcasing an amazing platform for folks to get access to goods, foods, and services, right? That's really what Uber is. Now, my role, as we jump into that, is involved twofold, right? So one, I want to hire people with backgrounds similar to yours, right? Your software engineers, right? Your developers, okay? TPMs, right? Engineers. Those are the type of talent that we're looking to bring on to Uber, okay? But I can't just hire people. I have to make sure that they have a soft place to land. So I focus on a lot of training and development, so that way I educate our recruiters on the backgrounds y'all possess, right? The areas you come from. So that way I help those civilians that work inside of Uber not be so intimidated by our backgrounds, right? So I educate them, okay? But I also have to educate a lot of our community, right? Because a lot of people will come to me and say, hey, Michael, I'm a veteran. I had this many years of service. What roles do you have for me? Well, I have probably about 580 open roles right now. I don't know if any of them are right for you because I don't know who the hell you are or what your background is, right? So let's have a conversation, okay? Because when you reach out to a recruiter or a professional at a large company, they may not know about every stinking role that's out there, right? But they will know, if they're from the armed forces, they will know how to talk veteran, okay? So if that's what you're looking for, if you're just looking for an entry point, say that. But don't ask anybody to do the work for you and find you a position. That's not how this works, okay? So I've got a team of folks that work for me that try and find roles and opportunities for people from the armed forces community. But then on the other side, on the business side, I work with our Uber for Business team, our federal affairs teams, our mobility teams, for us to achieve on-base access, okay? Now, what the hell is on-base access? Well, I think most of y'all kind of figured it out, but how many of y'all have had a real big meal right out on the weekends, and then you got to get back to post, okay, but they drop you off at the visitor gate, and then you got to walk 2 miles or 3 miles to the barracks or family housing? That's a pain in the butt, right? And it's also not very safe, right? Generally leads to service members really pushing their luck in trying to drive when they're under the influence or when they've had too much to eat, right? So what we've been able to do last year alone is achieve on-base access to 25 installations in the US alone. What that's done is brought our DUI rates down to a very, very, very low percentile. And some installations is 0, but not all, right? Some people still want to try and push their luck. But we've also brought serious incident reports down to 0, okay? Which means service member readiness is at an all-time high at those installations because they don't need to worry about getting from the restaurant or from that local watering hole back to the barracks, okay? So those are some of the cool things that we get to work on each and every day. Now, when you reach out to myself or somebody from my program, okay, this is what I want you to do. Say, hey, Michael, I saw you at the hackathon for Fall In on Sunday, or I saw you on LinkedIn. I'd love to talk about my background and how or what opportunities Uber has, and see if we can't find something that might work. That's a great conversation starter. Because then what we'll do is we will review your resume. Okay, we'll fine tune it if we need to. We'll help you wordsmith it, right? We do all of that before you even apply, okay? Because at the end of the day, we know what it's like. We've all applied to roles and never heard boo from anybody else, right? That's a problem, okay? So that's one of the things that my team works to solve. Additionally, we can let you know what the culture's like. Is it like back in the day, like in the super pump days, right? Or is it newer? Is it a little bit more inclusive, or is it a lot more inclusive? And yes, it is obviously the latter, okay? It's a lot more inclusive. But let us help you, we'll help paint a picture so you can see a little bit more about what it's like on the inside of Uber, all right? We'll talk about roles, we'll talk about opportunities, and we'll even help you set realistic expectations, okay? Because while you're out there seeking employment or building up your credentials or your background to find that new role, we've got our pulse on the market. We understand what's happening geopolitically. We understand what's happening domestically that's influencing hiring decisions that are happening all across tech, okay? So that's some of the stuff that we have to do on a daily basis, so that way we can make the best decisions possible for the community, all right? So that's how we work with the business. That's how we go after talent, okay? But once you get to Uber, then what happens, right? Well, we've got roughly 500 people that are part of our Veterans at Employee Resource Group. And these folks sit everywhere Uber sits, right? We're in over 70 countries, so we have veterans from a lot of our NATO allies in the countries in which they served, right? They are part of our employer resource group, and they are part of my hiring strategy as well. So you have the opportunity to collaborate with many different service persons from around the globe, many different military partners. You might refer to them as military spouses, but we call them partners here at Uber, right? So you get to learn from so many different people. It's really, really cool. But we don't stop there. We have onboarding and integration tools that you can use to soften that transition, all right? We've all been there. We've all been at that first unit or the first class or that first job. And the last thing we want to do is look silly. So more often than not, we sit in the back. We don't raise our hand if we have a question, okay? And we pray that the course ends quicker rather than later, right? Well, I know that. I know that a lot of people are like that. So I built out a comprehensive two-way tool that's 54 pages long, full of hyperlinked materials. It allows you to have a two-way conversation with your team and your hiring manager. So that way they can better understand what your background is, right? They also understand certain things to not talk about so they don't put their foots in their mouth, right? So those are some of the things that we try and do to make it as easy as possible for you, because we know that this is a challenging process and a challenging time. We are veterans every one of my team is a veteran, okay? And the reason why I choose to be that way is because we understand our community much better than the civilian audience. And we want to make sure we're there for you to answer any questions, concerns you have, but also to help soften that transition process. Okay? So that's about 15 minutes worth of me rambling on. I'm going to pause for a little bit. I'm going to see if anybody's got any questions. I'm happy to speak to you about maybe a couple of positions. You know, I don't know, like I said, a lot. We've got about 587 open roles right now. But like I said, if you want to, feel free to come off of mute and or ask a question if you have one.
Thank you so much, Michael. I've got a question right off the bat.
Yeah.
Let's say I do find a role. I'm on Uber's career page and I find a role that fits my skill set and my experience. I apply. Is there anything else I can do next, in your
Yeah,
opinion?
that's first of all, it's a fantastic question. And listen, if you've been looking for roles for quite some time now, or maybe you've got some civilian experience, you've worked in industry for a year or two, that's the only time I would want you to apply on your own. Okay. If you don't have any of that experience or exposure, I'd want you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Okay. There, I'm going to give you my email address, and there we're going to set up time. Okay. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to help you better understand what that hiring manager is looking for. And the way that I do that is that I go into the applicant tracking system, literally where the applications go. And I look at those hiring managers' notes. I look at that hiring manager's sourcing strategy. I look to see what competencies that person is really, really gunning for. And I make sure you have them before you apply. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to dangle a carrot or mislead anyone, right? We do a competency-based hiring, all right? So if you're missing a couple of those competencies, it's not, hey, let's throw this against the wall to see if it sticks. It's go out and get them, and then we can match you to the position. So I always like to have a dialogue with the person before they apply to the role, so that way I can bless off on their resume to make sure that it's articulated, tongue-tied. I can't articulate today. But so that way it articulates your background and your best skill set that aligns with that role. Does that make sense, Jamil?
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like we're getting some questions.
Yeah, I'm going to go with
chat.
Adriana's question real quick. Adriana, you asked if I could elaborate on some of the training that we have. Yes. Listen, it's 2024. They used to put us all in buckets. If you're a veteran, it didn't matter if you're tech or non-tech, right? You get dumped in the bucket. Are you a JMO or are you just a regular veteran? Nowadays, because there's programs like mine and so many more, what we do is we've educated teams that it's tech versus non-tech, it's SWE versus so many other different areas, right? but most of our roles typically require a bachelor's degree, right? And that's challenging because not every veteran possesses one. So last year I created a program called Boost. Well, I didn't create the program Boost, but I built the cohort for it. Okay, I want to be abundantly clear on that. That cohort consisted of 16 veterans and military partners that came from non-traditional backgrounds. They were typically E2s through E5s that did not have a bachelor's degree, but had a certificate in some sort of cloud application development, right? More so on the back end stuff. What we did was we took those folks and then we brought them through a paid 8 to 12 month apprenticeship. They were paid anywhere from $44 to $50 an hour for the duration of that. Once they were completed with the apprenticeship, they were converted to a software engineer 2. So those are the different ways that we go out into the community. And because we recognize that every veteran and military partner looks different, right? We understand that, but unfortunately civilians don't. So by doing so, we create alternative pathways and training programs that we can get people brought in. And I know Uber's not the only company that's doing that. My old company, Accenture, did that. And then I know Amazon's done that, Microsoft's done that. So there's a lot of different employers that are out there that do things like this. So I highly encourage you checking in on those. All right? You got it, Adriana. Thank you. All right. What other questions do we have, folks?
Yeah, folks, please don't be shy here. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. I've got a two-part question, Michael. One, how has the program grown and evolved over time? And what are your future plans and goals for the MVP?
Yeah, so unfortunately, y'all, I joined Uber in March of 2020. All right. Not like anything was going on in the world in March of 2020, right? Just the whole world shut down at that point. I was worried that I was even going to have a role, quite honestly. But ultimately, we went through hiring freezes. We've gone through social unrest. We've gone through an insurrection. We've gone through a different president and about to go to a maybe even another president or back to the old president or back to the president. Who knows, right? So we've gone through a lot. So as far as Uber's growth within this respective space, on-base access, hiring talent, skill bridge, alternative pathways like Boost, those are the ways that we've grown. But one thing that we've stood that I'm very proud of is while my program came off the ground, we lost about 10 other programs. So the MVP, the consistent hiring, the value in the armed forces community, the new programming that's been out there and available, that stayed. But we've lost so many other programs during that. So people still recognize the value we bring to the table, and I'm grateful that's there. What was the second part, Jamil?
The second part of the question is, future goals, exactly.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of things. So we are working on signing the Armed Forces Covenant in the United Kingdom this October. Basically, what we're trying to do is formalize an agreement with the Ministry of Defense over there that we're going to hire talent as it transitions in through that MOD. Additionally, we're going to be growing our Boost program and our MVP program in India. So I'm very excited to work with the military spouse community in India, as well as the veteran community. One of the biggest challenges that we're up against in tech is solving for gender parity. As you all know, the armed forces is predominantly male, and tech is predominantly male. So I'm doing my very best to make a concerted effort at solving for that, especially on the MVP side. Okay, so those are the areas that we're definitely going to tap into before the end of 2024.
Excellent. It looks like we've got a couple questions in the chat here. What feedback have you seen from the leadership at Uber about the MVP program?
Well, from a business perspective, they're extremely excited with our growth that's come through on base access. As far as the talent goes, all the stats are real. I don't know if you all know this or not, but veterans are promoted at a much higher rate than their civilian counterparts once they find the role that they find fulfilling, right? And generally speaking, when veterans come to Uber, they are very fulfilled. It's a lot of fun. It's a very high tempo, high energy place of employment. So from that perspective, they're extremely positive on the armed forces community. But then when we look about roles or look away from roles that involve specifically tech, but even our non-tech positions, y'all, we've got operation mindsets. So when we push folks into the operations positions, investigations roles, employee relations, anything on our people and places team, I mean, they're loved and adored. So, you know, folks can't say enough about the community. It's pretty cool. All right.
Awesome. Well, another question that I have here is, how do you see Uber's culture mesh with the military mindset and values?
Well, we each have values, right? So for the Army, pardon me, our leadership was our acronym: loyalty, duty, respect, self-service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. So as we think about that, right, Uber has its own values. You know, we believe in one Uber, build with hearts, see the forest in the trees. A lot of those values marry over with our branch's values. So there's a lot of synergy and a lot of intersection between that. So as we think about it, Uber's main priority is being an inclusive, anti-racist company. And when we think of the armed forces, it's the most diverse workforce in all of the United States. So it makes good business sense for Uber to hire talent from this community. So that is what our plan is. That's on our roadmap. And that's what we're going to continue to do as long as I'm here.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Looks like we got another question in the chat. Going back to your earlier point, is that one way to start a discussion with a recruiter at Uber if we don't have a degree? This person says, I don't have a degree, but have experience in X, Y, and Z. Do you have any non-traditional paths at Uber?
We do have non-traditional paths, but I mean, even what that person shared is somewhat vague and broad, right? So I would really need to see the resume to really understand, you know, where did the education stop? Where did the certificates and credentialing come in? What civilian experience or military experience that's relevant to the role? So once again, I can't answer that question in its entirety because once again, unless I know the profile of that human being, I'm not going to lead you down a role or point you in one direction, right? That's always best served through a conversation. And then is that one way to start a conversation with the recruiter if you don't have a degree? Yeah, I think it's fine. You know, at the end of the day, look, when you get on our careers page and you read the basic qualifications and preferred qualifications, right? And if you go from company to company to company to company, and you see that that basic qualification is there, and you don't possess that, and you still keep to try, right? The only other option is the alternative pathway, right? And that's something you have to engage with somebody from those teams in order to fully understand that, okay? I'm not saying degrees are required for every single position that's out there. I have people on my team that work in recruiting that don't have degrees. But in some instances, in some areas of tech, it's going to be incredibly challenging, okay? And whether you don't have GI Bill or you don't have the ability to get into school right now, I really want you to reach out and engage with somebody at that company to find out what it's going to take to get you there, okay? Because I don't want anybody spinning wheels, but we all know the definition that if you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? You got to work on that, all right? And yours truly is just as guilty of that. So I want you to make sure you understand that. What are good technical non-coding roles at Uber? Gus, you know, I mean, what do you mean by good? You know, I don't, can you help me out with that? My opinion. Okay. Well, I don't like coding because I'm not smart and I'm not good at it and I'm not trained on it, right? But if I were to take it, right, I love working with people. I love being able to build things. And so that's always been something that I've gravitated towards. Project management would be another not really technical role that still allows you to get in and a lot of the fun. Project management is something that, believe it or not, we all did in the military. We just didn't know what it was called maybe at the time. But really, that's always been fun to me. Seeing a task be completed and then moving on to the next one. It's always been something I've enjoyed. So, you know, I think that's a really good example. Adriana put in TPMs, right? You do need to have somewhat of a technical background in regards to quantitative analysis. So if you understand SQL or Tableau, right, you need to make sure you can understand those. That's going to be probably a hard skill requirement for TPMs too. So hope that answers it, Gus. But peruse the career page. I'm sure there's quite a few roles on there that you might find attractive. Okay.
As we get more questions here next couple of minutes, one question I have for you, Michael, is the market seems like it's a little bit shaky. We're noticing a lot of large and small companies doing layoffs. What small piece of advice would you have for anyone that's transitioning or doing a career change, have gone through a layoff? Any piece of advice for folks in that category?
Great question, Jamil. So bottom line is, y'all, you got to keep your eyes and ears open. Okay. I know a lot of you are mission focused, right? Something we learned in the military, right? Keep our eye on the prize. And if we complete that, we will be rewarded. Well, that's no longer the case. In the military, if you pass height and weight, you have a high enough AFQT, okay? You have your commander's signature on it, right? They'll send you down to the schoolhouse, get you trained, redeploy you back, and then you're off working, right? That's not the way it works in the civilian world all the time. More often than not, you need to have the skill set ahead of time before you qualify for the role. And even then, it's extremely competitive out there, okay? It's extremely competitive. To Jamil's point, there's been so many layoffs in tech as of late, okay? And they're going all the way back to 2020. So the market's saturated. Additionally, Iraq, Afghanistan are a thing of the past. We're not deploying there in the volume that we once were. I do know that there are some elements that still go to Iraq and to Syria, right, to Djibouti and to a few other places, but op tempo is slowed way, way down. And because of that, more and more folks are getting out of the military. So that makes it even more competitive. So at the end of the day, going back to my point about eyes open and listening ears on, you have to stay informed about what the market is doing, okay? This isn't, 2010, 2011, 2012, where companies were like, listen, we just want to hire veterans. We don't care necessarily what their backgrounds are. Now you need to broaden your depth. You need to build on your skill sets. You need to fine tune things. Because if you think 4 years of service and a certificate is going to land you at the role of your dreams, I don't want to sit here and poo-poo on that, but I'm just saying I don't necessarily think you should be walking into that without a plan B, okay? That's the big thing too. Folks, y'all need contingency plans, all right? I know that we have our dream companies, our dream employers, and our dream roles. You all can and will get there. I will repeat that. You can and will get there eventually. But you need to be patient. You need to understand what roles are available and understand that sometimes it's easier for you to just get into a company and then pivot after a year or so into the role that you're really seeking, okay? While you broaden that skill set. That's a good recommendation. A lot of folks are like, hey, Michael, I just want to work at Google, or I want to work at Amazon, or I really want to get there while I continue either my education or broadening my skill set. I have no problem with that. I encourage you to do so because there's other things you can do while you're fine-tuning your technical aptitude, okay? Because what we do in tech is you'll see it. If you look at on LinkedIn nowadays, right, you could probably find a bunch of leaders within tech that have started at one company, went to another, went to another, went to another. And before you know it, it's just this carousel in tech, in big tech. And that's what you want to get on. You want to get on the carousel. Okay? So I encourage you to find your way in. All right? If you're missing a couple of the competencies, I'm sure there's some other alternative role that you might be able to land. Get into the company, build up some tenure, continue your education, broaden your skill set, and then pivot into that role. Because there's internal recruiting teams, there's ERGs, there's mentorship that can help you move from point A to point B. All right? That's one recommendation I would make. Okay. What else we got, folks?
Yeah, it looks like we've got a question here. Along those lines, how is AI impacting roles, specifically engineering at Uber?
How's it impacting? Well, I mean, it is something that obviously we're keeping a close eye on. We're beginning to use it across some of our chat features for customer service options and things of that nature. We do leverage it for a lot of our communications, but at the end of the day, we always have human beings on the back end of that, right? It's not something that we've solely leveraged and is a one-stop shop. We have some amazing leaders like Lee Rudolph and Albert Greenberg. Both have come over from Microsoft and were there during, I would argue the heyday of Microsoft and brought a lot of folks with them. But that's one of the reasons why big tech companies have partnerships still with Microsoft, with OpenAI, so that they can continue to learn and be educated on that and bring that into the fold. Additionally, Jamil, one of the reasons why I'm tap dancing around this question is because we're not quite allowed to share everything that we're doing with AI just yet, but that will be coming towards the end of the year.
Yeah, no worries, and totally understand. Is there anything you can touch upon? Any hints about what Uber is doing in the future? I've been hearing so many stories around autonomous vehicles, things of that nature. If you can add some color to.
Yeah, yep. So you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly where I was going to lead to next. So we have a partnership through Waymo, which is owned by Alphabet, right? Google's larger company. We have a relationship with them to where we're testing a fleet of their vehicles down in Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know if anybody's from the Phoenix area, probably seen them, probably gotten a ride in, right? But you can actually order a Waymo through Uber down in Phoenix. So we're trying to strengthen that relationship because we do believe that AV space is really the future. And we are going to continue those partnerships, continue where we're going to go. So I'm excited about that relationship. And come next month, Uber will be participating in Google's VetNet. This will be our 4th year in a row. Not trying to give shout outs to other folks, but I do love Google. And I love Mike Benedetto over there and that whole team over at VetNet. But that is a great opportunity for y'all to tune in where some of our engineers will be on panels and they'll be talking about that Waymo partnership. So definitely want to encourage y'all to join that.
Yeah, and I would echo that. VetNet is a great program by Google. They offer so many different programs, resume reviews, mock interviews, and so many other things. Any last minute questions here? I do want to be respectful of Michael's time this Sunday afternoon. Any last minute questions from the audience here? One question I have is Uber doing anything related to space by chance? I know it's a pretty random question here, but it is a space related hackathon, so thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I wish we did. I wish we do. I wish we are. I think that's a future state thing. Right now, we're working on water. We're working on rail, especially internationally. So those have been a couple of milestones that we've accomplished this year. I don't know if anybody's been to London recently. I was there last summer with my father, catching the Cubs-Cardinals game over in London. But the Uber boat is right there on the Thames. Then obviously we've got rail, so you can actually order your rail passes as well. And then we just sponsored an all media arena outlet I believe it's in Berlin. So we have our first arena, which is pretty cool. But as far as space, I'm not saying we won't get there. I'm just saying keep your eyes peeled, folks, because I think it's going to be a pretty cool ride.
All right, looks like we got one last question here. Does Uber have any international roles for U.S. veterans?
So yeah, I can go right in. So Taj, with respect to that, at the end of the day, international work policies are crazy. They're wild, right? So first right of refusal always goes back to local nationals, full stop, because there's immigration, there's so many different policies that come into play there. It's incredibly challenged. I'll give you an example. If you were to say terminate somebody that lives in Paris, France, for example, right? Say we terminated an employee. We have to give that human being 6 months notice that we were terminating them, keep them on payroll, give them the opportunity to find new roles and opportunities. Yeah, Exactly. Wow is correct, right? So each country operates a little bit differently. So now what we can do is if you are hired in the US, yes, you can work internationally. If it's a stretch role, we have a lot of folks that sit in Amsterdam, a lot of folks that sit in London, some folks sit in Portugal that are US citizens, but are over there on work visas. So if that's something you'd like to do, as long as your role can allow for it, or you can look for positions once you do get here internally. Trust me, if my personal life was a little different, I'd be moving abroad too. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but we do give first right of refusal to our local folks. Okay, you got it. Okay,
Fantastic. And one last question from my
sure.
end, Michael. Could you share your experience? And looks like we got one other question from the audience here. Can you share your experience with four block and expand of what you've been involved in that area?
Yeah, happy to do. And real quick before I answer, Michael, yes, you can. 100%. We have offices in Brazil, a lot of them actually. So, and a huge population of Uber employees are down there. So, good luck down there. Reach out to me and I'll see what I can help you out with. Okay. With respect to four block, so I've been involved with four block not just at Uber, but when I was at Accenture as well. For those that are less aware, four block is a 10-week professional development program that's free for you. Okay, free for you. It gives you professional development, meaning resume review, coaching, interview prep, LinkedIn reviews, all of those things. Additionally, exposure to 10 awesome national and global organizations that hire from the armed forces community. These past few years, I've actually served as a career readiness instructor as well. So not only does Uber participate in it, but I teach it too. So if anyone's here is ever interested in that, I'm happy to get you connected with your regional directors so that way you can sign up for the fall cohort that's coming. Okay? But it's a great program. Out of our cohort, I think we had 14 or so folks just in the last cohort. We've got 40 for the upcoming. But out of the 14, half of them received offers before we completed the semester. Okay. Now, granted, sales positions, some of them are strategy positions, right? So it's not all tech focused, but at the end of the day, there's opportunities for everybody. Okay. So I highly encourage you get into it. It's available both in person and in some markets, it's available virtually. Okay. Now, on the way out, I dropped my LinkedIn information and I'm going to put it back in here one more time. Okay. Just send it into the chat. Please connect with me. Okay. Ask me a question or ask me for time. Okay. And we will set a 30-minute chat up. Okay. Yes, I'm busy, but listen, I care what happens to you all. I've been where you are, not in one of these environments. That's for damn sure. Jamil is the only one who's been able to bring me into a virtual environment like this. So kudos to you for Jamil for doing that. But I have been on the other side of the screen looking for roles, right? I've been frustrated and pissed and upset, right? Blaming myself, blaming others. Okay. Let me help you find the right opportunity, whether it's opening up my Rolodex and introducing you to another employer if we don't have what works for you, or giving you some tough love. Maybe we got to rewrite the resume, or maybe you've got to work on you, or maybe you've got to work on some interview skills, or maybe there's some things you just don't know. I'm not going to shame you. I'm not going to delete your DD-214. I'm not busting up your shadow box. But what I care about, what you have on that paper, is relevant information that's going to land well with that civilian reading your resume. Okay? So I can help you with a lot of different things. All we got to do is just make some time. Okay? But Jamil, thank you, man. As always, brother, I appreciate you having me. Everybody that's tuned in today, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Please reach out. Okay? It's going to take me a little bit of time. I see the messages starting to pop up on my LinkedIn now. But whatever y'all need, we are here for you. Okay?
Thank you so much, Michael. This has been so fantastic, and I can't wait to share the projects that the teams at this hackathon has built.
I'm excited to see it, man. I'm excited to see it.
Hoorah. Thank you once again.
All right, y'all. We'll see ya. Be good.
All right, folks. Yeah, that was really awesome to have Uber's military veteran representative and somebody who's in charge of that program join us. So for the next segment, what we're gonna do is let me actually share my screen and talk about what's gonna happen next. Um, so, and then let me share my webcam there. Beautiful. So, if you are new here and you haven't, and you're maybe like a guest, or a friend of somebody that's participating, you want to make sure you're signed in. And again, you can click and drag your screen to look around. You want to make sure that all kind of background, any unnecessary tabs or apps that are running, you want to close that so that when you're presenting, everything runs smooth. um, you want to make sure you're using Google Chrome. And then if you encounter any issues, just hit refresh or just message me on Slack and then we can help troubleshoot. Um, and then if you wanted to, you can update your, if you are currently in like an Android avatar, you can just press C as in Charlie to update that to a human avatar. Um, and let's dive in. So again, the mission for this year's hackathon was to develop innovative solutions to address critical challenges within the domains of defense, space, or aerospace. And for this hackathon, the judges are going to be basically judging you on, hey, how valuable is this project, and how original is it, how polished is it, and how technically difficult was your project. So at this time, I do want to introduce the judges to kind of give their backgrounds. Um, and I might ask one or two questions to dive into the judges' backgrounds as well. But Adriana, do you want to go first and give your background, your transition from the military, and what you're up to these days? And what you can also do is feel free to share your webcam if you want to on the second screen.
Do you want me to use the megaphone too?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I'll put myself on mute. And let me know if it's not working. I can close mine.
Yeah, I don't. I clicked the webcam.
Yeah, I was having issues with that. Can you see if yours works on the left-hand one?
Yeah, let me try that. Share webcam and allow. All
Oh,
right, can
perfect. Now
everyone
you're
hear me
done.
and see me? Am I double?
Yes. Yeah, which is totally fine.
Okay, I wonder if I can just stop this one. All right, yeah, I'll just keep going. Hi everyone, my name is Adriana. I was in the army for 8 years. I did information security and cyber defense. If you guys were in the army, I owned my own Essex shop. I was a Essex and CYC before I left, and I unfortunately got injured during my tenure. I shattered my hip during an air assault mission, and had to have surgery on my hip and all that fun stuff. So I got a medical retirement and I still wanted to be in tech, but I could no longer bend, reach, or do any of those crazy things that I used to do that didn't aggravate my injury. So I found computer science, which was still in tech, and I could still sit down and not aggravate my injuries. And I just fell in love with it. So I got my associates and I got my bachelor's in computer science, and I'm working on my master's. I am currently a senior full stack engineer, and I've been coding for 9 years. But in total, I've been in tech for 14 years. But yeah, I love this hackathon. I believe in its mission. I believe in um, introducing tech to everybody, and especially the veterans and those that are graduating from boot camps who are not in a traditional computer science background, because I do think you guys share a valuable perspective to organizations. And so, yeah, happy to be here.
Excellent. I do have a question, and it looks like somebody might be on hot mic, so that's why I've been muting you. Um, and then, yeah, we can troubleshoot if you're running into issues after this. But yeah, Adriana, it sounds like you. What was the thing? What was the spark that made you gravitate towards cyber and tech versus any other field that's out there?
Well, I was kind of born into it. Like my dad was a Marine, and he did tech in the Marines as well, and then he got out and he was in the Army and he did tech in there as well. And then my sister, she was also in the military, and just when Iraq was hitting off, and she did tech, and we all had the same MOS, and so I kind of just fell into it. So, but as far as like sticking to it and keep on going and keeping myself inspired and understanding my why, I think that there's so much that you can do with tech, and it's not just coding, but like you're building solutions that are actually changing societal problems. And I think that's one of the most amazing things that I feel like that keeps me going.
Awesome. Anyone have any questions for Adriana and her background before we kick things off with the next judge? And Adriana, where are you located? Um, and what was your favorite duty station?
Yeah, so I am currently in Central Oregon. I live in Prineville. It's a small town here. I'm on Starlink right now. I just
Oh,
love the
fun.
country.
It's fitting for the
Yeah,
space hackathon.
yeah. I here. I have like 5 acres. We're about to have like some chickens and stuff like that. But my favorite duty station, I love Schofield Barracks, Hawaii. Hawaii was my favorite. It's where I really got to shine. That was the prime of my career. I owned my first Essex shop, and I think Marines have Essex shops too, right? With the camo
Yeah,
and
that's comms. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that was my favorite duty station.
Awesome. All right. Yeah. Why don't we transition over to the next judge? And then to X out your screen, you could just click on the X on the top left. And if that's not working, feel free, or it looks like somebody is asking a question. So yeah, feel free to just unmute yourself um, and ask away here. Let's see, who's the person asking the question? Okay, it looks like Adriana was the one that pressed it. Okay, no worries. Jeff, do you want to click your
Yeah, I'm
um,
trying to share now too. Maybe it'll do both. Let's see. Is it not loading?
yeah, I don't see it on my end. Do you mind trying the middle one?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe not. I've pressed them all three now.
You mind just doing a quick refresh and trying it again?
I'll be right back.
Yeah, anytime we like switch environments, folks, as we notice these little hiccups, but generally doing a quick refresh usually resolves the issue. Oh, perfect. So I can see you, and then let me put you on the megaphone whenever you're ready to unmute.
Cool. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to turn my little avatar around because it's weird to look at myself.
Yeah,
Okay.
totally.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, Marine Corps vet. I was 0351 infantry
Yeah.
grad. Nothing to do with tech, right? I was just spending a lot of time in the field, shooting guns, and just all things grunt life. So tech was like a whole new thing for me. I got out in 2018. I had heard about this coding boot camp that Microsoft did through this program called MSSA. And all I heard was like, hey, you can make 6 figures as a dev. And I was like, well, I make like 30 grand right now as a sergeant. Tough life, you know. I was stationed at Pendleton at the time, and I was like, there's no way that I'll ever make a living out here. Um, So yeah, I explored it. You know, I've always was kind of like a gamer as a kid. Loved puzzles, loved Tetris. You know, just little nerdy things. And yeah, I started learning C# as my first language through this boot camp. And it was awesome. It was like, this is really cool. You get to be super creative and build things you want to do. And I was lucky enough through the MSSA program sponsored by Microsoft. You know, they give you an opportunity to interview, and I was offered a role on the Outlook team. So it was literally like 1 week I was in boots, you know, checking out a SIF, and then the next week I was like at a Microsoft office, showing up way too early for work. I think I showed up at like 8 a.m. and then a PM comes in at 8:30, and they're like, "Hey, dude, your boss doesn't get here till 10." It's like, "Oh, okay. I'll just keep drinking Starbucks coffee till he gets here." So just crazy transition for me and hardcore imposter syndrome. So if anybody's out there feeling that, you're not alone. You know, I'm surrounded by all these engineers who came from MIT and all these huge schools, and I'm just like, I was a grunt, you know, so had no clue what I was doing. But a lot of it, you adapt and you overcome, and these are all skills that we learned in the military. And so, um, you know, just like Michael said, you get promoted quick as a vet because you just do your job and you do it well, and you have like really high expectations for yourself. So I got promoted. I was at Microsoft for 4 years. I got promoted every year I was there as an engineer, and got to build Outlook in all kinds of ways. Learned React through Outlook as well. So started off like first job was C++, Universal Windows Platform. Nothing like the C# I was doing, and you just kind of figure it out and you learn and you bang your head on the keyboard for a while. And then all the other devs were essentially doing the same thing. They're like, let's rewrite this in web tech. Um, so we did. And I was lucky enough to, you know, be on the first team to use React Native for Windows. And we built out that platform, which eventually turned into Outlook Web and some vanilla React in there. And yeah, I mean, once you have that power and you learn how to be a dev, you feel like the world is yours. So I left Microsoft, and been at a couple startups since then. Most recently joined a company called Vrinst. I'm a senior engineer there. So I've been in tech about 6 years now, and it's been just an awesome ride. I love this industry. So just awesome to see so many vets in the dev world. I mean, it's like super exciting. So yeah.
I was going to say, similar to Adriana's story, it's pretty inspiring to see, your career kind of flourish here. What would you attribute your success? I know you worked at Microsoft, you worked at startups, you've been, maybe you can touch upon like if you had any leadership roles in tech and in specifically engineering. If you do, can you add some color to that and like what would you say attributes to that success?
Yeah. So my second startup, I started off as a founding engineer, and then I was like the second hire. We started hiring more engineers, and eventually it's like, hey, we need some leadership here. So I stepped into that role. I was the head of engineering for 13 engineers at our largest. And I mean, it's not so different than leading in the military, right? You have to care about your people, you know, worry about what they're worried about, think about, you know, what do they have going on in their life, and you kind of lead through this that kind of love for your people and try to feed their careers. So while you know we have this mission driven mindset, as Michael said, so if the company wants to get to X revenue number, like how can I enable my engineers and challenge them to do that? And it's the same way I would have treated, you know, my infantry guys. Like, hey, you guys want to get promoted? You know, make sure you're PTing hard, make sure, you know, you're giving classes and kicking stuff so the leadership can see you as well. So I can make justification for how you're doing. And the same thing carried on in the engineering world. It's not really too different. Leadership is pretty universal. And so you just lead by example, you do the hard work, and people will follow if you have a vision.
It's pretty motivating. And then last question is what's like one tip you would have for somebody that's maybe potentially like a junior level developer or maybe just like super beginner trying to become an advanced beginner or mid-level? Any tactics or strategy that you can share to help level up the technical aptitude,
Yeah,
especially in this day and age of AI and stuff?
totally. Yeah, I didn't have ChatGPT back then, which, yeah, it's an amazing tool now. But so normally, if you guys have a current role you're a junior at, you might not be super passionate about the work you're doing, and that's normal in my eyes. The way I tended to push myself was like, any silly idea I had, any passion that I wanted to go build, I would go do that thing, even if it was a different tech. Um, like I want to go try out, I don't know, Rails, or I want to go try out a new database technology. um, Go immerse yourself in that environment. And although it might not be strictly related to your day to day work, it will improve your dev skills. And you'll just slowly start to be a subject matter expert in that area just because you're passionate about it. So I always tell newer devs, like, explore your passions because that's where you're going to want to spend time. I think dev should be fun. If you're not having fun in your job, then it probably doesn't look like fun to the user either. So just chase the things that you're interested in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey. We're super stoked and honored to have you as a judge, especially as a fellow 0311. It's it's pretty cool.
It's wild, man. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Yep. So let's move forward here, guys. So the hackathon prizes, we try to mix up the prizes every year. For this year, the team leader for the first place team is going to win a SpaceX Starship torch. The second place team leader, they're going to win a Claymore speaker, and then the third place winner is going to win $75 Uber Eats or Uber Ride credits. And so, what the Starship torch looks like is this is what it looks like right here, and then this is what the Claymore Mine Bluetooth speaker looks like over here. And then just to remind everyone else that everyone else will get or has the opportunity to get a one-on-one coaching session with myself. Resume reviews and all that sort of stuff. And so, yeah. And then when teams are presenting, just a reminder, you can click on this screen to zoom in. So, again, it's just hovering your mouse over the screen, clicking on it, and then you'll see a modal with an option to zoom in. So, that being said, I know Nika's team is dying to go first. So let's have Nika's team go first since she is requesting that, which is Team India. Everyone else that's a team leader, if you could just type in the main Vets Hackathon channel /roll dice. If you could do that right now, that this will give us the order of which teams are going to go. So, okay, Ben's team is going to go second, and then Ty, if you're here, could you print the order? And it looks like Adrian and Dan tied. So if you guys want to roll again, let's roll again. Okay, so Dan's going 5. And then Ty, if you're in here, can you unmute yourself and let me know if you're here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool. And then once everyone's done rolling the dice, and it looks like Adrian might need to roll again because it looks like Ben's team is number 2.
So Nika's going first.
Yeah.
Ben's team's going second. So Adrian, roll again. Dan's team's going 5th. Adrian, roll again. Angie, roll again.
Adrian, I think it's just good because he's number 3.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Or number 4, yeah.
And
then
Angie, okay, good. Okay, so we
do you
have
wanna,
Nika's first. I'll write it down.
Yeah, that'd be great. So Nika's team, why don't you guys get started? And what Ty is going to do, he's just going to put, India, Team India is going to go first, and then he'll put down who else is going second, third, fourth, and fifth here. So, yeah, Nika, if you're ready, why don't you go ahead and start getting set up with presenting your screen, presenting your webcams. Webcams, again, are on the left and right, and then your main presentation can go in the center.